Hello, welcome to Coming Out and Beyond LGBTQIA plus stories and support. My name is Anne-Marie Zanzel, and I'm a later in life lesbian. I'm also an ordained minister and a mom and a partner to a wonderful woman. I coach women coming out through the coming out process later in life. That's my main job. I created this series because I believe that through stories and storytelling, we can learn, discover, and connect with each other. Hearing others' stories always brings us closer together. So, my first guest, my very first guest today is Karin. I met Karin when she joined one of my later in life support groups, and I did a general call a couple of weeks ago because I feel like sharing our stories as later in life community is important. And Karin answered the call. So, hi, Karin. How are you today?
Hey, Anne-Marie, I'm good. Thank you for doing this. This is, I think, invaluable to people like us.
Yeah.
Was for me a year ago, these sorts of stories. So thanks for doing this.
So, my first question to you is tell me your story. So, you are somebody who came out later in life. You were in your late 40s when you did it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so, tell me your story. What happened? First of all, just tell me your story and then I'll ask a bunch of questions.
Okay, sounds good. Well, yeah, my name is Karin and I am 50 years old now. And I was in a 27-year long marriage with the same man for 30 years. And it was a perfectly imperfect marriage. It was a wonderfully shameful, toxic, beautiful 27 years. We have 3 grown children, young adults. They are perfectly imperfect like the rest of us. And I guess the biggest thing I can just say about my 30 years with my ex was that I very much loved him, was in love with him. I will always love him. And coming out was the worst thing and the best thing. And this last year, and I'm still coming out, this is, I think, a journey that I will be on for a very long time. It is hard to understand, even for myself. How can this have been the best of times and worst of times all at the same time? How can I have learned some of the greatest, most beautiful things about myself and felt the worst about myself? My story really begins way before those 30 years as a teenager. My first sexual experiences were with girls. And because of a lot of other junk in my past, I was very ashamed, very secretive. I knew that the family that I was in, at the time, I knew that there just wasn't a place for me to be really who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know, and I didn't even know who I was. I think I felt like, what's wrong with me? Something must be wrong with me. This must be wrong. Therefore, it was very hidden and secret. So much so that I did the expected thing of, having the cute high school boyfriend, before I went away to college. And I very much wanted to, I think, just do what my family had always done and what society had always done. And that was, I very much wanted to be a mom and I wanted to have a husband. And I did fall in love with a man when I was in college, and the rest is history. That's, where we met, and we married and had this great life, perfect life that a lot of people saw from the outside as perfect. And so I think as these things of recent started coming out and people have started to hear and learn my story, not just because we separated and then divorced and tons of ugly things that came, constantly, I think the question or the comments were things like, I would have never known. You had everything. You guys looked perfect. Your kids are perfect. You live the perfect life, all of these perfection things, which now I really know are things that I felt at some point were expected of me.
Hmm.
And so I never all of those years whispered a word of my truth, or I kind of looked at it as what had happened, when I was younger. I never disclosed or shared that with anyone. um and I was also the girl who, was open about like going to counseling as like a young mom and then raising kids. And my husband and I had kind of been in and out of some marriage counseling. Marriage was hard. These were things that I just came to like accept.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be this hard. um I'm ashamed, even sometimes today, to think back of how much I hid, how many times I allowed, you know, his truth to be heard and not mine, how many times I bowed to making life look perfect. I mean, my kids really did have a perfect life. We did, in a sense, have a perfect marriage because I worked so hard to be sure that's what people saw, and I convinced myself that that's what it was.
Hmm.
Um, so in this last few years, I had a catalyst for sure.
Can you explain what
Um,
a catalyst is?
okay, so the kind of the woman, the person, the thing, because I know that it can be a thing as well, that put that mirror up in front of me and kind of throttled me into truth.
Hmm.
Scary as you know what, truth, like just terrified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Terrified truth, confusion and fear, lots of fear. And that is a woman who I'm with now,
Hmm.
still a year later after the loud coming out. I think that my coming out process was very quiet in that I definitely from time to time felt things and talked to myself about, attraction to women or other relationships or intimacy with women, but I quickly buried it and hid it because, after all, I've made promises and vows, and with this man, I've vowed never to give up, and I've vowed never to lie, and I've vowed to, make my marriage work. And so therefore I'm going to bury all of this stuff because as long as I keep doing that work, this will never surface. Well, it did. Um, this,
Because you can't beat it down. It
right.
keeps coming up.
I,
It just keeps
yes,
coming up, right?
it definitely did. And it really did in the last, almost 2 years. My work relationship turned to a friendship with a woman who was outwardly a
Transactional.
lesbian, and she
Yeah.
had been out, yes, since she was in high school. And our friendship uh, grew. We became closer friends, and during that time, I I think what I started to recognize were not only these safe moments between she and I, but these really honest moments where, in a way, she held a mirror up and I was really able to see myself. And like I said, it was panic after panic over,
Right.
is this real? Is this really what I'm feeling? And that truth and safety turned for sure into an attraction and a much deeper connection.
Mhm.
Um, and then, in a way, the rest is history as far as that relationship.
Yeah.
Um, I think what that time was very chaotic for me. It
Mhm.
was really, really difficult. Like I said, I really lived very much in a panic mode of, how can this be true? Is this right? Am I really gay? Am I a lesbian? Am I bi? I mean, I had so much going on. I thought I was crazy. I thought something must be way wrong with me.
Mhm.
Um, I was struggling a little bit more vocally in my marriage and terrified to come out and speak my truth to my ex. Um, but I knew that I was teetering on this verge of, I have to know, and this strong want and desire to be with this woman. And I knew I had to come out to
Mhm.
him. And so, in a therapy session, because I didn't feel that it was safe to come out to him alone. Um, I knew for so many years how many things he would talk me out of and how many things I bowed to and kind of hid again because I did a lot of listening to his words. Um, anyway, and so I did come out to him. He was the first person I came out to in therapy, and I was pretty clear on this. He knew this friendship, and I was pretty clear on how I was confused and felt that this friendship was changing. Um, and his initial panic wasn't even so much about my truth as it was about his fear of embarrassment and shame. And but you'll never cheat on me was kind of the focus. And
Mhm.
at the moment, at the time, I was very much teetering on whether I was going to cross that line of physically being with this woman or not. Um, and I had made promises then and there that no, but I need to figure this out. So we need to be on the same page together. And sadly, that was just a very short period of time. Um,
'Cause he really struggled with it.
oh, so much. I mean,
A lot of anger, I remember, right?
it was really it's heartbreaking to think back to that panic and that fear and devastation and then just absolute sadness that I knew he was feeling. And while I was rushing to try to love on him and come together with this truth, but I wasn't going to abandon this truth, I couldn't. It was screaming in my face at this point.
Yeah.
Um, I just wanted so badly to do this like the healthy way. Um, and that is today what is I think the biggest tragedy of my story is that it could have gone differently. It could have gone better. It could have spared a lot of pain.
But
But
but you also have to recognize that for us to be able to do something healthy, the other person that we're trying to do it with has to be a full participant in it.
correct.
I
And
think a lot of us have this vision that we're going to have this great modern family. And unfortunately, as we both know, that just doesn't happen for the majority of us. Or it does happen eventually, you know?
yeah, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That is this is far from the perfect modern family. It's what I desperately wanted in that moment. Like I said, I feel when I look back to that time, that period of time feels so rushed and so short. And so I hate having regrets, but if I knew where I was today, then if I could have, predicted and known, because I'm okay today. There's a lot of other things and a lot of other people who are not, but I am okay today. And if I knew that I would be, maybe I would have calmed and not been in such a rush or in such panic. But I was, in the moment I was, and I very quickly saw that deep pain for him turn to panic and anger to save face, I guess, for him. And once I realized that that was headed in an anger direction, I needed to like jump ship. And
Mhm.
I did on a lot of ways, in a lot of ways. First being that I crossed that line and I was with my partner,
Mhm. Mhm.
my girlfriend. I knew that it was going to be, well, I thought it was going to be amazing, and it was far more amazing than I thought it was going to be. So it just it just all that part just all kind of fell in line so beautifully and naturally and safely, and never ever in my life could I have imagined such a level of safety and love and connectedness. I mean, beyond even the greatest and best moments or days or years with my ex.
You know what I think it is, what you described when you were with your partner for the first time is this sense, and as it goes on, is this sense of feeling at home, which I like that's what I hear from you. It's a sense of feeling at home, and it sort of like blows you away because we have a home. We have a home with a spouse and children, and how can this pretty much often when it's a new relationship, this virtual stranger feel like such a safe place and so secure and so home-like when um, we've been in this whole different world for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I think of that time and that like aha and feeling those feelings for the first time, the thing that comes to me is overwhelming fulfillment that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
I had safety and security as far as routine and
Mhm.
my children and the love that my husband and I had for one another because of our children, that connectedness, and that is still to this day. Like he, in a sense, he will always be the love of my life because the love of my life are my children, and he is the father to my children.
Mhm.
And so what I started to say there, I had a lot of security in that routine and that comfortability and everything from we led a really good, safe, secure life as far as education and wealth, and our children are amazing, and our friends and vacations and second homes, the whole thing, that the perfect, picture piece. But what I didn't have, and I didn't even know how much I didn't have it, was that emotional safety,
Mhm. And
that
intimacy.
that intimacy to the level of like truly, truly bearing all.
Mhm.
Um, and that brought this, for lack of a better word, euphoria, this fulfillment that I didn't even know existed.
Mhm.
Um, and that's the piece of the connectedness with my girlfriend, that I knew in this storm, how can something that feels so right and so safe and so good be wrong? And
Right.
therefore I have to follow, and I have to follow this.
Mhm.
um, Unfortunately, in all of that, and that messy time and panic and coming out and the pain and anger that he was feeling, while I tried very hard to be on the same page for the sake of our kids, and I had a little plan in mind of how to come out to my kids and hopefully some things that this was going to look like in the future. Unfortunately, none of that was ever able to happen. And it got just horribly ugly.
Can I ask you, were you outed by your
I
family?
was.
Yeah,
I
that's so not
was.
right, right?
Yeah. So I had had plans to go, and I did. I kind of flew all over the country in this, like, 3-week period of time to be face to face with my children, and to be face to face with my siblings, and to be face to face with my parents. And he was able to one up me, so to speak, on each one of those trips. And they were all privy to his pain and panic and story and feelings before I had a chance to speak. So
Mhm.
what ended up happening was me running around like a crazy person, doing some, like,
Clean up.
damage control cleanup. Yeah, cleanup of this horrible, scary mess that everybody was feeling. And when I say everybody, and I'm talking the people closest to me, that was my family of origin and my 3 children.
Mhm.
Um,
Didn't follow my own advice.
and yeah, and meanwhile, I mean, it was happy. We lived in a small town, had lots of friends. We were very well known and liked. And yeah, he was meanwhile also outing me the way he wanted to, in our hometown, and everywhere else. Our friends across the country, old college friends, everything. It was all his story, not mine.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you that. How do you see that now, in the midst of it? It can be incredibly painful and very because it's not his short story to share. It was
Mhm.
not. Your divorce is his story to share, but
Yeah.
your sexual orientation is not. So, like when you look back at it now with some like hindsight, what do you see? And what do you think about it?
What I see is, believe it or not, as hard and horrible. It was horrible, Anne Marie, and very painful. There's a little part of me that is grateful and thankful, because I don't think that I would be in the place that I am today and have been catapulted, so to speak, and had to make decisions and moves and kind of move forward like I did.
You're a rocket out of the cannon, honey.
I totally was.
Yes.
And one thing that I think that very quickly started teaching me was, the cliche of these are the kinds of moments where you really find out who your true friends are.
Right.
And that weeded out an awful lot of people very, very quickly.
Mhm.
And there have been a few lingerers, and there still unfortunately are today, of people who kind of live with like one foot,
Mhm.
in my boat, so to speak. And it's those are still hard and painful relationships and friendships. And I'm still, like I love everybody and I have no problem working through the pain. I own so much of the shock and pain and hurt and lies um, that I've put into this whole situation. There's absolutely a hurtful piece that I own, that I'm responsible for, that that I want to be heard. The
Mhm.
people particularly that I've just so deeply hurt, my children especially.
Mhm.
Um, I own that, but I don't
And
often know.
yeah, I have a real question of curiosity for you. How you admitting your truth of who you are, how have you hurt your children? Because you've always said that to me, and I've always, because we have very similar experiences. I have 4 kids. A lot of the same things happen to me. Um, how, I mean, you changed their lives, yes,
Mhm, mhm,
and perhaps what you viewed as a perfect family sort of you realized it wasn't, right? It
mhm,
wasn't a perfect family. So
mhm,
I'm curious, like how do you feel like you've hurt your children? Because once we're divorced, we're divorced. And so
mhm,
like a lot of moms who are coming out later in life,
mhm.
a lot of times our main concern is our children. We
Yep.
just want to have a relationship with our children. And and for me personally, I mean, if I can have a relationship with my siblings and stuff like that, that's great. But I'm like, if I don't, like life would go on.
Mhm.
So like, well, how did you hurt them? Like really hurt
So
them? How do you
yeah.
feel? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I certainly didn't hurt them purposefully.
Right.
I certainly had a plan in which it was on my terms and the way that I wanted to continue my very healthy relationship with my 3 children, on my terms, and that didn't happen. And part of me, I guess, says, well, the facts. I mean, they didn't ask for what they interpreted as their like perfect family to be broken up.
Hmm.
I recognize that they thought things were so perfect because I made things perfect for
Right.
them. I made it easy for them. I hid a lot of things from them, all that sort of stuff, which maybe or maybe not in time will come out, but that's irrelevant. The fact is that divorce, no matter what the circumstances are, particularly young and old children, um, especially when they think things are so idyllic,
Idealized or idyllic.
yeah,
Yeah.
that they're not. And so I know that I have some part of that. I have repeatedly said I did not divorce my family. I did not leave my children. I
No.
left a marriage. I struggled with my sexuality. I came out. It was very messy. I wanted privacy. I wanted to separate these things out because a lot of them are irrelevant to the next.
Right.
But they had a louder voice than mine that they ran to protect and love on. And that's really the only voice that they've heard. And it's hard, but my attempt to not talk badly about their dad and not make excuses for myself. I want to hear what their pain is and I want to acknowledge their pain, but I also know that they're young adults and here's where I am. I will love on you and I am sorry for because I did lie and I was unfaithful when he knew this was happening and asked me not to be. Those sorts of things. Um, so I guess I know there's hurt, but I also know that when they're ready, you know, I'm ready to rebuild. And
So I'm curious, do you see that that having a relationship with somebody else outside your marriage really has nothing to do with your kids?
Of course.
you
Of
know,
course.
you know,
Yeah.
and so it does have to do with your former spouse. It does.
Yes. Yeah.
But it doesn't really have to do with our kids, you know?
You are absolutely right. And that's something that I've had some recent practice. So here I am a year and a half later. And unfortunately, you know, in an even worse place in a way with my kids. I don't have a relationship with my children and I miss them terribly.
Mhm.
But I have put up boundaries. I have made sweeping, big, important statements. And I've said things like, I did not leave you, or I did not divorce our family. I left a marriage. I divorced your dad. And, you know, I'm allowed to love who I want to love. I'm allowed to be who I want to be.
Mhm.
I am not forcing or pushing any relationship on my children with my girlfriend. I know this is hard and I know this is painful. However, they cannot tell me who I can and cannot be with. And I think just short of saying the words, well, I'll only come and visit you if you're not with her, or I'll only have a relationship with you if she's not in your life. I mean, they've just come just short of saying those things, but I know that's where they are right now.
Mhm.
And I've said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's not going to happen.
Mhm.
And that is the part that's completely separate of me as a mom and me wanting to have a relationship with them. And um
How do you feel like since I met you in the very beginning, like when you were still married when I met you.
yes, yes.
And how do you feel like I see such growth? Like I see such growth because the Karin I knew in the beginning would have been running around trying to talk to each one of the kids and, try to make everything better and oh, maybe wrap it up in a picture, really pretty picture and
Mhm.
pretty present with a bow. And you're
Yep.
so different now. Like I see this like, hey, hey guys, I love you.
Mhm.
This is my life. I'm going to lead it. When you're
Mhm.
ready to become a part of my life,
Mhm.
I will be here for you. My love
Mhm.
for you is still so there for you. And I know you very well and I know how much you love your children. I do know
Mhm. Mhm.
that. What
Yeah.
is what is the bit like I know that's a huge change for you. What are some of the other changes that have changed for you when you have stepped into your authentic self?
Um well, I've had a lot of change. I left the town, the state where I was living. I moved out completely on my own, with a lot of uncertainties, even with regard to my girlfriend.
Mhm.
Um, uh, I owed that to myself. I had come out and this whole big, huge mess and pain was happening around me, but I needed to move forward for me. And in fact, it's kind of interesting. I feel like in the last year and a half, the piece that I've spent the littlest on is kind of really, really analyzing like the details of that sexuality piece. I know that sounds
Oh
weird,
yeah,
but
that gets put to the back burner.
yeah. Oh, it totally has been to the back burner. Like
Yeah.
for so long, I was obsessed with like, well, what am I? What's the label? Like I couldn't even say that I was a lesbian for so long.
Mhm.
So that whole piece, I feel like is still and probably will be,
Well, do you think
ongoing for a long time.
yeah, I think it's settled. Like you know who you are, sexual. I mean, as your sexual orientation, you know that now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it becomes comes on the back burner because you've got other shit you're doing.
Yeah. Oh,
It's like,
yeah,
okay, I'm just
definitely.
gonna put this
Definitely.
over here for now.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so to answer your question, as far as big changes, I left that I left where we were living, which is still my children's hometown, and I moved to a whole new city. One of my children lives in this city where I'm living now, um, but I don't see them.
Mhm.
Um, I did for a very little time. I think there's a little curiosity of, oh, good, mom's getting her shit together, and this will be good, and moving here. But I think as soon as it was understood that Um, I wanted a little space and time to figure myself out. And then a few months later, my girlfriend was included in that figuring myself out, and I wanted to be with her. And unfortunately, I think that's when it changed again. And she did move here, and we do live together.
Hmm.
And since what month is it now? December. That happened, I think, in like August. Anyway, um, so yeah, I guess I'm kind of losing track of what you just asked. Sorry.
So I asked what are some of the big changes that
Oh,
you have,
some of
and
the
how
big,
do you, but I know it's like that, that's a physical change you made. But when
yeah.
we first, before we got together and we started talking, I also heard a lot about how you deal with your children, and like
Mhm,
how you're just there for them and you love them, but
mhm.
you said to me, it's their stuff to figure out.
Yeah, it is. And so how did I get to that point? I think part of what has helped, to be honest with you, is their level of anger and how incapable they are right now to be anywhere near having a relationship with me right now. They still have so much to figure out. Um, and I have to trust, I don't know why, but I just do. I have to, my children are amazing people. They're amazing human beings. They're young adults. They're so smart. They're so great. They're so fun. And they are so hurt and broken right now, and they have to figure their shit out. And I did for many months run around like a chicken with my head cut off, constantly texting, constantly calling, constantly writing, individual letters to each one, begging in a sense, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, please, 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 hear my words, hear my story. I mean, I was constantly trying to do good by them or explain myself to them. And it got exhausting, and it continued to hurt me more. And
You let
I've
go.
had a lot of therapy too. I know that I am worth it. I am worth happiness, and I deserve love, and I deserve to understand myself in this whole messy journey. And I can't move on unless I move on. And so by no means does that mean I'm leaving my kids behind. I love my children. I've made it very clear. I am here when you are ready. Um, and I think just maybe over time, it just got easier to not check in so obsessively, constantly, over text. Um, and so I'm on about a 3 month, I guess, ish, 3 month period of time where it's been silent. Um, and I just have kind of sat back, and I'm ready whenever they are, and I'm waiting, but I also know that, I mean, I could be waiting months, I could be waiting years. I don't know.
Mhm,
I don't know.
mhm, mhm. Do you think your coming out experience has made you able to sit with the gray better?
Yes, absolutely. I also was in, I mean, I was in a marriage that was very black and white and
Mhm,
very right and wrong. And here's how it's going to be. And there were a lot of really wonderful things about that, and some safety in that, and security, maybe not safety, security, routine. But I also knew that whenever I had that gray or more ideas or other things that I felt were right or that should have been heard and then they really quickly weren't, I just got used. Yeah, it's, I'm embarrassed I mean, it's shameful to see how submissive, I was with all of that. And so not only coming out, but also being on my own,
mhm.
and weeding through like those real friendships, those real relationships, and the ones that didn't last, has made me all the more sure that, I mean, like I said before, if something feels so right, how can it be wrong?
Right.
Um, and yeah, there's also a part of me that, I, of course, always want the best, for the people that I love, especially my children. And
Mhm,
so I mean, of course, I want the best for my children. Of course, I want them to tell their truth. Of course, I want them to be happy and never be afraid to say, you know what, this is wrong, or this isn't working for me, or I don't like this. And I didn't do that for so long, but I would want them to. So I don't know, I came to a place where I was like, well, if I want that, then for them, then I can model that,
For them.
I deserve that and model that back for them. I
Mhm.
don't think they see that right
Not yet,
now.
not
Not
yet.
yet. Yeah.
They will. They will. I mean, I understand what you're talking about because I had a couple of children that got really pissed off. 2
Yeah.
didn't, 2 did, and,
Right.
it was really challenging, and like you, Karin, it was when I let go, that's when they came back. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't like I think I don't even know the time frame, probably about a year, 6 months to a year or something like that, but I was like,
Yeah.
"I'm not gonna chase you guys anymore." You know,
Yeah.
I'm here. I love you. And one of the things I think that people should know is that the thing is a lot of times as moms, we think of our kids as like a unit, which is
Mhm.
they are such individuals. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's the kid that you don't expect to be particularly accepting or welcoming and warm, they are, and the one that you think is going to be like, oh, no problem, they're the ones that struggled the most with it. So
Yeah.
I often say to people, how your kids act to difficult news in life is how they're going to react to this.
Yeah.
And I think I think one of the things you know about divorce is that when we stay in marriages when we're unhappy, which you just said this, we're
Mhm.
teaching our children that they
Mhm.
should stay in places that they're unhappy.
Mhm.
And none
Mhm.
of it, I think most healthy, emotionally healthy parents don't
Mhm.
want their kids to be unhappy. They want their children to have happy lives. And so
Mhm.
when people like you show an example of, listen, I can't stay here anymore. This is
Yeah.
not making me happy. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, people who come out later in life, we're also like the poster children for like marriage therapy because we've been through so much of it with our
Right.
spouses. Because
Right.
we're trying to like figure out what's going on and why we can't communicate. And yes, maybe being gay may have a small piece of it, but a lot of times we come from marriages that have a lot of problems that
Yeah.
have nothing to do with our sexuality. Because
Yeah.
you were in marriage therapy, and so was I,
Mhm.
way before
Yeah.
we were able to acknowledge who we were.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. That model for my children uh, really also included these fleeting moments of unhappiness and things that they saw. I mean, when
It's
we
everything.
were a tight family. Yeah, we were a tight family. They saw what happened behind closed doors
Yeah.
and they raised their eyebrows and they were shocked a lot of times. But what they saw for so many years was soldiering on or taking it or being okay with, well, okay, well, I feel this way, but it's not going to be heard. So I mean, they knew those things. They knew those things. And over time, as that kind of, wears on me, not to mention all my other, separate of my marriage, but my other crises as far as learning my truth and coming out, it's just this moment where you put the screeching halt brakes on to say, I want them to see something else. And so while it's hard and sad and painful not to be in a relationship with them now, I have to trust that someday truth shakes, its way out at some point. They're going to recognize how many things they heard, from their dad that wasn't the truth about me. Or maybe I will have an opportunity to be heard, which I still don't really feel like I have been. And it'll be a light bulb aha moment for them to say, really? Because I thought, the different. I just, I have to trust and think that hope that that will happen someday.
Mhm. Mhm. So you are extraordinarily brave, my dear. You really are. You are brave and you are full of wisdom. And I really love how you say that it is their journey and they're just going to have to figure it out. And like you and I, sometimes our greatest learning comes from pain. It
Mhm.
doesn't come from happiness.
Absolutely.
It comes from when we really had to struggle with something. And so this will be I believe one of the many defining moments in our kids' lives,
Yeah.
and they just have to, especially with adult children. I don't know if you feel this way, Karen, is that like I feel that the older children really struggle when mom comes out or dad comes out. It's
Mhm.
the little kids are the ones I'm like, you have a 7-year-old. Oh gosh, it'll be their
I
normal.
know.
Like,
You're absolutely right. You
you
are
know,
absolutely right.
I sort of put like 11 and under to be like,
Yeah.
you have to tell them and but like sometimes it's such a simple conversation with little kids. It's like I had a client recently whose mom was like, whose child said, "So you're going to have a boyfriend?" And she said, "No, I'll probably have a girlfriend from now on." And the kids were like, "Okay." And then,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Pass pass the milk.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
they don't
yeah,
care. And
I
while
know.
the older children, I think they really struggle because and for me, I define older as 12 to 30.
Yeah.
And there are people that are in their 30s and 40s when their parents come out. But
Mhm.
in our community, it's generally 12 to 30.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
find those kids struggle a lot for some reason. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But a lot of times
Mhm.
it's more about the divorce
Yeah.
than their mom or dad being gay. But it's
Yeah.
also they're struggling with you know, who they thought their parents were and who they thought one of their parents was,
Yeah.
and so that takes a while for all the pieces to fall back together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to think. My kids were 19, 20, and 22, almost 23. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well,
So
thank
that's my
you.
story, Anne Marie, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, thank you. I have a couple of quick questions for you to
Yeah.
end us today. Coming out song. What was your coming out song?
Oh my gosh.
And you can have more than one.
That's a great one. My coming out song. I'm sorry that I have to bail on this, but I do have an explanation. So I feel as though growing up as a child in my childhood home and then in the home that I made for my own children with my ex-husband, music was so, so important and was in the background of our life all the time. And it's something that has come that I miss, but it's come to a screeching halt. And music hasn't been as important or a part of the landscape of my last year and a half.
Well, we got to
And
fix
it is
that.
something that I've thought a little bit about, but sorry, I don't know that I have anything.
So I don't know if your coming out song will be there because that's so personal, but I have a lesbian playlist that I'll send you.
Please do,
Yeah.
please do.
Every singer
Um,
on there is a lesbian. So
yeah, well, I
it's
have to say, through
non-binary
some of yeah, no, through some of my friendships across the country with other lesbian women who came out later in life, I've learned of a few other artists and stuff like that. So I certainly know of them, but I couldn't pin something to like my coming out song. But
or
yes, please share that playlist with me. Sorry,
okay.
I feel like I just
No worries.
yeah
So
bailed on you.
best last or best book you've ever read that really touched you.
Ibram X. Kendi's book. I mean, this is 2020 has been a huge year, so not just for me personally, but um,
Is that
the
which one?
How to Be an Anti-Racist, but actually paired with Rachel Cargill is somebody who is kind of leading the Great Unlearn, is what it's called. And she literally has like a course that I've been following as far as unlearning in regard to
Racism.
civic unrest and those. Yeah, and that has been massive for me this last 6 months, particularly. But I also am learning how many things can parallel. Yeah, there's so many things that
Well, yeah,
society
the great
dictates,
unlearning.
right? And systemic ways and processes of which not just race should look, but families should look and women and yeah, the whole thing. And so that has been huge for me.
Well, yeah, because coming out later in life is the great unlearning, isn't it? I mean,
It
it's
is.
great
Oh,
unlearning. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Last and but not least, um, the best thing about your life now.
Freedom, um, safety. emotional safety and freedom to be just who I want to be, who I am, not like unapologetically being happy.
Ah, so that's amazing.
Yeah, I'll pair it with, like I started, it's amazing to me how you can have the happiest times and lessons and moments um, parallel to the worst. And
Mhm.
that definitely is still true today. I still have a ton of pain,
Yeah,
but I feel like all of it is honest.
and worth it.
Oh, very much worth it. Yeah.
I think the one of the things about coming out is that it's this, what I noticed because I've been writing a book is like the parallelness, like where you're learning to hold incredible joy and excitement
Yes.
in while we're holding grief and sometimes
Mhm.
chaos, and it's like it's so can be so discombobulating when we do it, but
Yeah,
it's it's so worth it,
it
and when
is.
you're in the midst of it, it's really hard. It's really hard,
Yeah.
and you and I are both reflecting back on this now that we're sort of through the messiest part of it,
Yeah.
but it's so worth it to
Yeah.
be able to claim your authenticity, whatever it is,
Yeah.
it is.
You're absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's cliche, but I think that the depths of that pain are necessary for me to have understood and recognize the height of the joys and the good things. I mean, you kind of can't fully experience each one fully without the other.
yeah,
But
that's
that sounds, yeah. I mean, that
I
sounds
know it
cliche,
sounds so
and it's one
cliche,
of
but it's
those,
not.
yeah, and it's one of those things that like the intelligent Karin or the, I've had a lot of therapy Karin would say, but not really get it until you really get it, until you really experience it. So
Well, yes, and I gotta end, and I could keep going on forever, but it has been wonderful to talk to you, and I thank you for your honesty and your courageousness, and also most of all your vulnerability, Karen. You are pretty amazing. So thank
aw.
you.
Thank you for those kind words, Anne Marie. I can't thank you enough for what you do for women like you and me. Really, I mean, I want to be helpful to anybody that I can be, even if there's only, 3 seconds of something helpful on this. So
Oh, there's more than that, I guarantee. All right, thank you.
thank you so much.